horizon with hearts by roots and rivulets, with skin scraped right from the shoulder, sinking now invisible alongside the bricks, with the pewter and disdain or the wax and fluids of battle stopping too briskly without signals to protesters which might hurt a schedule for encumbrance and go on grasping for the handfuls of shards in the ditch where we sat down for another night, trying the dogs by the encampment by scattering a slim box of salt bigger than the contour projected in the droplets of moisture and fuller than mercury after the infinite glow that hovers near the shower of coins, or the operation so unexpected before melting beside those vivid cubes of light vacillating from left to found, then back again and all around at lowest ebb and lowest angle, while a small circular blade flashes pictures and colours. If the thumb touches the forefinger or the eye shuts out the apex, or fear becomes visual, or voltages are apparent in pale fronds that rise at dawn for the robbery of profiles, dusting a plain that extends to leave the lawn alive for lack of entreaty or resignation, that's suddenly slow or now suddenly still, or crushing the spine as found on a clouded surface at the side of the parade that's blue and senses vibrations in the trench by the door, and a quiet sound now heard to question the machinations of the vision of lime trees growing mysterious and faded from the sun, and clothed with spider and silk that looms near a ghostly machine that tips the sole of the sandal in the ocean, or slides under rocks by the brassy facade you found, that's bitterer than me and harder than tanks, and rough and overgrown in overalls decorated with something creeping southwards and breathing hard to steal the key from the comfort of the grass, and the grating transit of the shuttle to the station that ends the ceremony with the icons that stretch through the passageway by the weapons reacting to the presence of things, much like the state of mind induced in snow, and the perspex beakers now disintegrating and stranding a vacant expression, with glances by roots and rivulets with moss scraped right from the slate, sinking now useless and invisible alongside the divide by the bricks, with the pitch blend and disdain or the foams and fluids of fission stopping too abruptly without signals to protesters that might compose a schedule for removal, and goes on grasping like the desire of handfuls of wire for the ditch we memorized for another night, trying the tower underneath the encampment by floating a slim skein of salt thinner than the contour described in the droplets of iodine and fuller than cables after freezing that cling near the shower of coins, or the operation so unknowable before melting beside those bilious words with velocity vacillating from lost to found, then back again at lowest frequency and lowest depth, while a blade punctures pictures and prints if the thumb grazes the forefinger, or the partition shuts out the emissions, or fear becomes palpable, or voltages are overhead in pale skies that rise at once for the robbery of geometric profiles surrounding a cylinder that extends to cover the lawn entirely for the lack of containment or resignation that's increasingly sad or now increasingly still, or disguising the spine as drawn on a clouded panel at the side of the device, subsiding and sensing vibrations in the gangway by the door below, and a quiet repeated sound now resonating to question the truthfulness of the vision, now growing tough and faded from the breeze and clothed with threads and silk that looms with a moving machine, and awkward gate that drowns in the soul of the ship or the ocean excavating under rocks by the facade you've unearthed, that's bitterer than me and bulkier than tanks, and soft and overgrown in ribbons decorated with rope creeping northwards and breathing fast to steal the impulse from the comfort of slumber, and the billowing granite of the salute to the station that's performing the ceremony, with the icons swimming in the passageway while the placards reacting to the full force of things like the state of being that's buried in snow, and the chalk beakers now materializing and stranding a perceptible expression with glance by kennel and keep with moss dyed right from the slate, suspended now useless and abject alongside the divide by the dwelling, with the pitch blend and pits or the foams and fear of fission remaining too abruptly without access to documents that might charge for removal, and go on waiting like the dozens of wires for the spire we memorized for another night, undermining the tower above the dome by floating a dark skein of particles thinner than the volumes described in the displays of iodine, more volatile than cables after freezing protein that clings near the silhouette of the mechanism, or the impression that's so unknowable before settling beside those sunken words mutating from loss to retribution, then back again and echoing at regulated frequency and regulated depth, while a trail punctures semaphore and prints the message grazing the shore, or the partition compresses the emissions, or cognition becomes palpable, or birds are overheard in dark skies and sleep at once for the power of isotopes surrounding a cylinder that locks tight and covers the people entirely for a quantity of containment or currency that's increasingly communicated and increasingly uploaded, or disguises the switch as drawn on a mounted panel at the top of the device that's defective and subsiding, and stores data in the gangway by the clock below, and repeats on instruction to command the truthfulness of the archive sprouting tough and abundant from the breeze, and hung with threads and clasps that fall with a moving aspect, and awkward fingers that drown the classification of the ship in the street, or excavate under pressure by the outcrop you've unearthed that's loftier than me and bulkier than engines, and soft and repackaged in ribbons slick with ropes running northwards and dissolving fast to seize the impulse from the slumber, and the billowing veil of the salute to the sphere that gives the idea of the figures that swim swim in the fountain by the placards bending to the full force of things, like the capillaries buried in muscle and the chalk pearls now materializing and incising a perceptible perforation with uniforms by kennel and keep, with Hessian dyed right from the curtain suspended now wet and abject alongside the road by the dwelling with the arches and pits, or the bronze of history that remains without access to documents that might construct a charge for the imagination and goes on waiting like the sentinel of a dozen dimensions for the spire where we sheltered for another night, while undermining the thought of the dome by abandoning particles more desiccated than the volumes provided in the displays, the reception more volatile than helium after dead protein surfaces near the silhouette of the mechanism, or the impression so unanticipated before settling beside those sunken pyramids of organic matter mutating from wrong to retribution, then back again and never there, at regulated mood or regulated temperature, while a vapor trail obscures a semaphore and creases if the message reaches the shore, or the foot compresses the soil, or cognition becomes greyer, or birds group in cages and sleep at last for the power of isotopes, littering a hatch that locks tight and leaves the people trapped for a quantity of liquids or currency communicated or uploaded by finding the switch, as seen on a mounted lens at the top of the descent that's defective and tarnished and has data in the aftermath by the clock faces, and an instruction now echoes to command the indices of the archive abundant from the rain and hung with clasps that pull or fall with an alien aspect, distributing the classification of the emotion in the street, or tightening under pressure by the outcrop you found that's loftier than me and colder than engines and destroyed and repackaged in armour, slick with oil running westwards and dissolving quick to seize the flag from the board of control and the hazy veil of the offering to the sphere that's giving the idea of the figures vibrating in the fountain by the obelisk bending to the sorry state of things, much like the capillaries observed in muscle and the glass pearls now trickling down and incising a perforation with uniforms by home and hide, with Hessian torn right from the curtain hanging now wet alongside the road by the trunks with the arches and dread, or the bronze and barricades of history emerging without recourse to freight, which might construct a jail for the imagination and goes on shining like the sentinel of dimensions for the town where we sheltered for another night, entertaining the thought by the bridge by abandoning grains more desiccated than the image provided in the tiles of the reception.